Hello students, welcome to your WebSeek.Academy English channel. Today, we will discuss the poem An Old Woman, which is a part of your first PUC English syllabus. This powerful and thought-provoking poem is written by Arun Kolatkar, a well-known Indian poet who wrote in both Marathi and English. A note on the poet. Arun Kolatkar, 1932 to 2004, was educated in Mumbai where he worked as a graphic artist. A winner of the Commonwealth Poetry Prize, Kolatkar has contributed to Kavi, Opinion Literary Review, New Writing in India, and The Shell and the Rain. He is a bilingual poet and has translated Marathi poems into English. This poem is selected from Jejuri, a collection of his poems. An Old Woman Summary. An old woman clutches a tourist's sleeve and tags along with him. She wants a 50 paise coin. For this, she offers to show him the horseshoe shrine. This refers to a legend centered around a horseshoe-shaped depression in a rock about Khandoba, the presiding deity at Jejuri, who leapt from that rock onto his horse as he carried his wife with him. This is a legend that the true believer reveres and the skeptic doubts. The tourist moves away as he has seen the shrine already. The old woman tightens her grip and hobbles along, not giving up so easily. She is persistent. She clings to him like a burr, a prickly seed pod that clings to clothes. Irritated by this persistence, the tourist decides to face her with an air of finality. He decides that he will not yield to her and thereby wants to put an end to the farce. He presumes that his no-nonsense reaction will deter her. But the old woman's matter-of-fact question, what else could an old woman do to survive on these wretched hills, strikes the narrator like a thunderbolt. The stark reality that hits the narrator allows him to see her at closer quarters. When he turns to look at her face, he is shocked. There are two deep sunken eyes that look like bullet holes. Her skin is wrinkled and cracks appear around her eyes and spread beyond her skin. He feels that everything is falling apart. Everything is cracked and in ruins. The cracks spread beyond her skin to the hills and the sky. There is a catastrophe. The hills crack, the temples crack and the sky falls and shatters like a sheet of glass. But the old woman stands there as a symbol of all-round degradation. The narrator feels ashamed. He is reduced to the small change in the heartland. In a moment of realization, the narrator tourist finds himself reduced in his self-esteem. His awakening to the real world makes him feel small, as insignificant as the small coin in her hand. An Old Woman Comprehension 1. 1. You in the poem refers to A. The speaker, B. The passerby, C. The reader, D. Anyone. Answer, D. Anyone. 2. What does the old woman offer to do? Or, what does the old woman offer the speaker in return for 50 paise? Answer, take the speaker to the horseshoe shrine. 3. What does the old woman demand from the tourists for her service? Or, what does the old woman demand from the pilgrims to show the horseshoe shrine? Answer, a 50 paise coin. 4. The lines, you turn around and face her with an air of finality, suggest that he decided to A. Give her a 50 paise coin and get rid of her. B. Allow her to take him to the shrine. C. End the farce. Answer, C. End the farce. 5. The old woman's eyes are compared to ____. Answer, bullet holes. 6. You are reduced to so much small change in her hand. Here, the speaker is suggesting that A. One is reduced to an insignificant position. B. One feels that one is being cheated. C. One feels a change in one's personality. Answer A. One is reduced to an insignificant position. An old woman comprehension 2. 1. How is the plight of the old woman depicted in the poem? Answer. The old woman depicts all those who live below the poverty line in India. If this is a common problem of many because of the problem of unemployment, the woman's age is an indicator to the fact that the problem is more pronounced in the case of the old. When young, they might have done more productive work and earned money. But in their old age, with their physical fitness reduced, they are reduced to the level of forcing themselves upon tourists who want to get rid of them. This can be a very painful experience for the people who have lived with dignity all along but are suddenly reduced to the status of being considered poor. Arun Kolatkar wants to take up this social problem. He takes up the question of geriatrics, the caring to be shown to the old. Does he ask as to who is responsible for the pitiable condition of the woman? Shouldn't the government take up the problem of the old and take necessary measures to ensure that they live a life of dignity? Kolatkar has a definite purpose in talking about the cracks on her face extending to the hills, temples and the skies. He seems to suggest that just as monuments are part of our heritage, the old are also part of our heritage. We cannot treat them as unwanted, disposable stuff. When the speaker has this realization, he has a changed perspective and he finds himself reduced to the position of being a person of insignificance, a cheap person like the small coins in the hands of the old woman. But this realization has not dawned upon all, and that is why the old woman continues to be a tourist guide, which is nothing but a euphemism for a beggar. Her suffering is indicated by the description that she has to bullet holes in the place of eyes. Eyes are normally taken as the indicator of life, but the old woman's eyes are lifeless bullet holes. Thus, Kolatkar takes up a social problem with a special focus on the aged and tries to awaken in us a sense of responsibility towards our fellow brethren. 2. The old woman in the poem is a self-appointed tourist guide, not a beggar. Do you agree? Give reasons. Answer. Certainly, the woman is a self-appointed tourist guide because she pesters the speaker to avail of her services even when his intention is to get rid of her. Her persistence is seen in the fact that she hobbles after him and goes to the extent of stopping him by tightening her grip on his shirt. The speaker is more and more annoyed and he wants to get rid of her by being firm and refusing her offer. If we compare the interaction between the speaker and the old woman, we see that it isn't much different from the transaction that takes place between a tourist and a beggar. The beggars also follow people around pestering them with a demand for alms. But the difference is that if the tour guides offer their service, the beggars don't. This immediately introduces a world of difference between the two categories of people. It shows that even if the tour guides can be as annoying as the beggars, they are people with self-respect. 3. How does the speaker's attitude undergo a change? Answer. The speaker's attitude undergoes a change because he is posed a question. The old woman's question, what else can an old woman do on hills as wretched as these, makes him realize the wretched life of the old woman. The word wretched, used with reference to a pilgrim center, makes it clear that places of worship will have no value if people at such places suffer. The question stumps the speaker and he is filled with admiration for the woman who has remained on the wretched hill resolutely. Though ugly and old, she is shatterproof. At this point, there is a sudden reversal of role. The speaker, who had until then considered the old woman insignificant and worthless, suddenly realizes that it is he who is insignificant because he has not seen the kind of struggle the old woman has witnessed in her life. Her strength and forbearance are stronger than his. An old woman comprehension 3. 1. The old woman reduces the self-esteem of the speaker and makes him feel that he is nothing more than so much small change. Comment. Or, how do the stature of the old woman and that of the narrator change at the end? Answer. Arun Koltkar's poem, An Old Woman, begins with a commonplace experience, but ends in a revelation. At every tourist place, you will meet a self-appointed tourist guide like the old woman in the poem. They need the money and will pester you. They even promise to give you some service in lieu of the money you give them. Generally, tourists give them something to get rid of them. But a few are firmer and refuse to be influenced by the persuasive attempts of the guides. But what is to be understood is that they do what they do because they have no other means of earning their livelihood. If they don't do what they do, perhaps the only option left for them is to beg. The very fact that they don't beg, but offer their services shows that somewhere deep within them there is some self-respect, and hence treating them as but is inappropriate. Though they are irritating, one should remember that it is the circumstance that has reduced them to this. Especially in the case of an old woman like the one found on the hills, what else would you expect them to do for their living? When the speaker realizes that he has no answer for the question posed by the woman, what else can an old woman do on hills as wretched as these, his perception of the old woman undergoes a sudden change. Her eyes, which are like bullet holes, become a sign of her suffering. The cracks on her face become symbolic of the cracks in a society which do not care for the old and the meek. That is why the speaker says that her cracks extend beyond her skin, and the hills, temples and the sky crack. In other words, everything around her indicates the cracks in the life of such helpless people. Yet she stands shatterproof, continuing with life doggedly, whereas many others would have cracked under the blows of poverty. Suddenly the speaker has a newfound respect for the old woman. She becomes a sign of her heritage, the land from which she comes. It is people who dismiss her with a 50-paise coin or shoo her away without giving even that who become as cheap as the 50-paise coin. Koltkar describes this transformation in A Tourist by placing before the readers the tourist's experience at a pilgrim center. 2. What is the speaker trying to convey through the lines, and the hills crack, and the temples crack, and the sky falls? Answer. The speaker had associated only ugliness and annoyance with the old woman until he had the awareness of her strength as well as her helplessness. With this realization, she becomes the very symbol of the Indian heritage, and the other things, which had until then been considered monuments of heritage, begin to crack. The poet seems to suggest that it is the Indian heritage in flesh and blood that we have to value. The reference to the hills, temples and sky cracking and falling could also mean the radical change in the hitherto held opinion of the speaker. The shock the man receives in looking at the sky, perhaps as blue as the woman's eyes which are like bullet holes, leads to his enlightened perception of the woman and her connection to this old land. The man notes that as he looks at the woman, and the cracks around her eyes, the cracks seem to spread to the landscape around her, to the hills, the temples and even the sky. But he sees that even though the sky may fall and shatter around her, she is untouched, shatterproof. In the midst of the life that has reduced her to trying to earn some money as a guide for tourists, and seen only as an old woman to the tourists, not worth their time and barely worth their notice, her resolve is strong. She is a part of the land, as old as it is, she is as immovable. She lives, the man realizes, with what is made available to her. With the man's realization, he feels as if he has been reduced to nothing more than his money, for he does not have that kind of connection to his land or his heritage. And perhaps, in light of the trials and tribulations of life, he is really the unimportant one, beyond the small change in his pocket, but she stands, unbreakable and strong. 3. How do you relate the cracks around her eyes to the cracking of hills and temples? Or bring out the significance of the phrase, cracks around her eyes, in relation to the description of the woman as shatterproof crone? Answer. Cracks around the eyes are ordinarily signs of old age. But in the case of the old woman, they signify much more than mere physical features. The old woman's eyes are just two gaping holes filled with empty air, with the hills and the sky. Then the cracks begin around her eyes, spreading beyond her skin, and then the hills crack, the temples crack and the sky cracks, and the sky finally shatters and falls like plate glass. The old woman herself is shatterproof and nothing happens to her. Only you get instantly reduced to a small change in her hand. It is you who shatter because her eyes are already bullet holes which are formed with the cracks around the holes. You are shattered with the realization that the whole system which is guilty of testing the grit and determination of an old woman is full of cracks. People who look at the old woman as a pest are full of cracks. Monuments themselves crack in the face of the tenacity of the old woman. Thus the old woman, despite the cracks around her eyes, is actually the only one who is shatterproof. Thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to WebSeek.Academy for more English lessons and notes. See you in the next video. Until then, learn more and achieve more.